All right, welcome back to Ben's Book Club. Today we are diving into a really important one, The First 90 Days by Michael D. Watkins. Honestly, this is kind of the Bible for anyone starting a new role. It doesn't matter if you're getting a big promotion or just moving sideways. Those first 3 months, they are absolutely make or break. And this book, well, it's basically your survival guide.
Okay, so let's get right into the core idea. The big challenge in any new job is hitting what Watkins calls the break-even point as fast as you possibly can. I mean, think about it, right? When you first show up, you're basically a cost center. You're taking a salary, using resources, asking people for their time. You're consuming value. Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to flip that script and start producing more value than you take. And that's what we're going to break down, the framework to get you there fast.
So, chasing that break-even point, it's a high-stakes game. And with high stakes comes a ton of pressure. And this pressure, it pushes so many people into what the book calls the action trap. You know that feeling, the need to jump in and start making changes right away just to prove you were the right hire? Well, that's the trap. And acting before you truly get the lay of the land, that is almost always a huge mistake. So, the big question is, how do you avoid falling into that trap? Well, Watkins has a great analogy for this. He says you need to act like a doctor. I mean, you'd never want a surgeon to start cutting you open without doing a full diagnosis first, right? Of course not. And it's the exact same idea here. Your number one job at the start is to diagnose the situation long before you even think about prescribing a solution. It's all about understanding your new world, not just trying to force fit what worked in your last one.
And that leads to this really crucial point. You just can't use the same playbook for every single job. It's just not going to work. The strategy that made you a rock star at a fast-growing company could be an absolute disaster and one that needs a major turnaround. You've got to tailor your approach to the specific situation you find yourself in. One size does not fit all.
And this is where we get to the book's core diagnostic tool, the STARS model. It's a brilliant way to figure out exactly what kind of situation you're walking into. Let's run through it because this is so important. First up, S for startup. This is where you're building something brand new, basically from scratch. Or maybe it's a T for turnaround. Here the building's on fire, and you've been brought in to be the firefighter. You know, a department that's bleeding cash or missing all its targets. Then there's A for accelerated growth. Things are humming along, and your job is to pour gas on the fire, to scale it up without everything falling apart. Next is R for realignment. The company isn't failing, but it's drifting. It needs a new focus. Your job is to get everyone pointing in the same direction again. And finally, S for sustaining success. You're inheriting a championship team. Your first priority here, don't break what's working. Seriously, figuring out which of these 5 you're in changes everything you do next.
Okay, so you've used the STARS model, you've got your diagnosis, awesome. Now what? Well, you can't just keep that information to yourself. It's time to build a game plan, and that plan begins with the most important person in your new work life, your boss. You absolutely cannot afford to just sit back and wait for them to tell you what to do. You have got to get proactive right from day one. And to make sure you're proactive in the right way, Watkins lays out this incredible framework of 5 essential conversations you must have with your boss. And look, this isn't about being needy or demanding. It's about co-creating a plan for your success. So you walk through them. First, situational diagnosis. Hey boss, I see this as a turnaround situation. Do you see it the same way? Get on the same page. Second, expectations. What does a big win look like for me in the next 6 months? Make it concrete. Third, resources. To get that win, here's the budget and the people I think I'll need. Does that sound right? Fourth is style. How do you like to get updates? Daily emails, weekly meetings? Figure out the mechanics of how you'll work together. And finally, personal development. How am I doing? What should I be focusing on to get better? You guys, nailing these 5 conversations, it is the bedrock of your success. All right, so once you and your boss are totally on the same page, it's time to look outwards. Your fancy new title, it doesn't mean much on its own. It's not going to magically earn you respect or get people to help you. You have to build real, actual credibility and momentum with your new team and your colleagues. And what's the fastest way to do that? You guessed it, secure some early wins.
The book is pretty specific here. You should be aiming for some real, tangible wins within your first 30 to 60 days. And listen, we're not talking about boiling the ocean here. These aren't huge, revolutionary changes. We're talking about small, visible victories that build what Watkins calls political capital. Think of it like putting trust and influence in the bank so you can make withdrawals later for the bigger, tougher challenges.
But, and this is a really important but, not all wins are created equal. There's a huge difference between a bad early win and a good one. A bad win, that's something cosmetic. Maybe it's easy, but it doesn't actually move the needle. A good early win, though, that's something that's truly meaningful. It lines up perfectly with what your boss cares about, and crucially, it builds momentum for the harder stuff down the road. See the difference? It's not just about being busy, it's about being effective. It's about doing the right things, not just anything.
Okay, we have covered a lot of ground so far, right? We've talked diagnosing with the STARS model, getting aligned with your boss, planning out those early wins, but how do you stitch it all together? What's the overarching mindset, the structure you should have for this whole 90-day journey? While the book lays out this simple but honestly brilliant roadmap, you can break down the 90 days into 3 distinct phases. In your first 30 days, think of yourself as an anthropologist. Your one and only job is to watch, listen, and learn the culture. Soak it all in. Then, for days 31 to 60, you shift into being an architect. You take all that learning and you start designing your plan. You start building the foundation with those early wins we talked about. And finally, for the last 30 days, you become the accelerator. Now that you have a solid base, you can really start to hit the gas and drive the big, meaningful changes that will leave a lasting mark. And all of this leads to this quote, which, for me, really captures the soul of the entire book. You're not hired to be the hero who walks in on day 1 with all the answers. That's not the job. You're hired to build the process that finds the answers by day 90. Just let that sink in for a second. That shift in mindset, from feeling like you have to know it all to focusing on learning it all, that is the real secret. It's the key not just to crushing your first 90 days, but honestly, to building a successful career, period. Subscribe so you don't miss an episode.